In WWE, there are backstage fights which are scripted, the ones we see on television and enjoy the most. However, there are also those that we often can't see, the ones that are real and have personal motives and real reasons that end badly behind the scenes. And the truth is, many times wrestlers have actually fought backstage trying to solve problems. There are some moments that, fortunately for you, have been caught on camera to watch, and others that have only been witnessed by superstars. Red the Hitman Hart was betrayed at Survivor Series in 1997. Vince, along with Shawn Michaels and Triple H, planned a way to make Bret Hart lose the match without him actually submitting. Bret Hart, in a fit of fury, spat in Vince McMahon's face publicly. Obviously, all of this happened for real. He went backstage and confronted Shawn Michaels, who denied knowing that was going to happen.
They even killed Shawn. Were you aware of this? I had no idea. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know anything. We had to swear that we didn't know absolutely anything about this.
On the other hand, Bret Hart's wife was confronting Triple H about what they had done to her husband.
I had no knowledge of this, I swear to God.
Swear all you want, but God will judge you someday. Hunter, remember that one day you will pay for everything you've done.
Bret Hart, in the Vince McMahon documentary for Netflix, revealed that Vince showed up backstage. And he ended up giving him 2 punches to the jaw and said he will never regret hitting him. In fact, he says that's the best thing he's ever done in his life. All in London is the most important event in All Elite Wrestling history so far. And it was there where CM Punk would lose his patience with another colleague from his company. At that event, while the other matches were happening quickly, the website Fightful reported that CM Punk and Jack Perry had a physical altercation when Punk was heading to the ring for his match and Jack Perry was coming back from his. A few days earlier, both had already had a verbal altercation because Jack Perry wanted to use real glass in his match, and CM Punk told him it was a stupid idea. After a few months, it would be All Elite Wrestling itself that would release the real video of what happened that day, where CM Punk would come out on top. The first version of the incident said that Jack Perry was the one who started it all, since when they crossed paths, Perry got too close to CM Punk and hit him. CM Punk responded and ended up choking him to calm the situation down before going to his match against Samoa Joe. However, the second version circulating on social media was the real one, as it said that both of them crossed paths, and CM Punk intentionally started confronting Perry to provoke him. Both exchanged strong words, probably related to what Perry did in his match. After that, they began fighting, with CM Punk throwing the first punch. They stayed like that until CM Punk put him in a headlock and then let him go. You can see wrestlers like Samoa Joe getting into the fight to try to break it up. Shortly after that incident, CM Punk was released from his All Elite Wrestling contract. And well, the rest is history. Chris Jericho and Brock Lesnar almost got into a real fight at the SummerSlam event in 2016 held in Brooklyn, New York. Lesnar was having a match with Randy Orton when he suddenly started elbowing him in the head in a brutal and relentless way. This caused Orton to start bleeding in an impressive way. Chris Jericho was backstage watching in horror everything that was happening on television, and he was very angry. Because he didn't know if what Brock Lesnar was doing was actually planned or written in a script. Jericho said, "If this isn't planned, it's horrible, and if it is planned, it's even more horrible, because elbows to the head can even end a person's life." When Brock Lesnar got backstage, he saw Chris Jericho was pretty upset. Lesnar started confronting him, and Jericho didn't back down. A war of insults began, and Jericho mainly confronted him about the damage he had caused to Randy Orton. Jericho said on his podcast that Brock Lesnar used a lot of homophobic insults against him to defend himself. When both of them were about to get physical, Vince McMahon and Triple H decided to step in between them and stop the dispute from continuing. It is rumored that the real fight between Sheamus and Sin Cara mainly started because of an argument that Sin Cara had with Drew McIntyre, who is a close friend of Sheamus. Let's go back to June 2014 when Sin Cara had a problem with Drew McIntyre, where the masked man felt that McIntyre and the Scots were somewhat arrogant. During a recording of a WWE show, Sin Cara was sitting at the commentary table, when suddenly Sheamus arrives and tells him to get up because he's the one who's going to sit down. Sin Cara said that he got there first, and Sheamus told him that it didn't matter since he had been with the company longer than Sin Cara. Sheamus. He must have caused this problem for Sin Cara just to bother him, since he was aware of what Sin Cara had said to his friend McIntyre. That's how, later backstage, Sheamus called out to Sin Cara and immediately threw a punch at him. Sin Cara reacted quickly, grabbed his legs and threw him to the ground. A group of 5 referees who were talking in the backstage hallways. They quickly went to separate them and called other wrestlers who were nearby to help stop the fight. This report quickly spread across all internet portals, and Sheamus himself wrote the following on Twitter. "You must be freaking out. I don't remember being hit by Sin Cara backstage. That's how we Irish and Mexicans hug each other." March 30th, 2003 was the day Brock Lesnar had his first match at WrestleMania, and it was against Kurt Angle. However, that day, Brock Lesnar almost lost his life. All of this happened because earlier that same day, the producers asked Lesnar to please perform a shooting star press. Star press, a move that Lesnar had already performed in previous years, but had stopped doing because of how dangerous it was. While a more agile wrestler wouldn't have any trouble performing it, for a wrestler like Lesnar, because of his height and weight, it's extremely difficult. There were many rumors that after the match, Lesnar wanted to take out Kurt Angle, because he was the one who didn't get close enough to receive the move properly. This whole theory was false, since Lesnar was full of rage, but he wanted to take it out on the producers who assigned him. Perform the move that he already knew could be dangerous. Lesnar was exploding with fury while everyone was trying to calm him down as best they could. Fortunately, there are images of that moment. What an incredible character Santino Marella was. Without a doubt, he is one of the funniest characters in WWE history. However, he had an altercation in 2005 with Gene Cornette. That's because when Santino was in Ohio Valley Wrestling, the training ground before joining WWE. Let's see, how can I explain this to you? It was like NXT first, the wrestlers trained well, and then they moved up to the main shows. In a segment, Santino Marella was supposed to act scared of the boogeyman, but instead of showing horror, he laughed. Jim Cornette, after that segment, went to ask Santino for an explanation and ended up slapping him backstage. Because of this incident, Jim Cornette would be fired from the company. And 10 years later, they would meet again in the halls of a convention. And a fan was able to record this moment where you can see both of them fighting, throwing pretty strong insults at each other, but much more so from Jim Cornette's side. According to what he was shouting, Jim Cornette said that it was Santino Marella who was provoking him and he just wanted to get away from him. Even though Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle were great friends, tensions would lead them to come to blows backstage. In an episode of SmackDown, Eddie Guerrero didn't like that Kurt Angle and his henchmen were given a pretty harsh beating. However, as soon as the SmackDown show ended, Eddie Guerrero went backstage to look for Kurt and told him that they had gone too far. Kurt told him that he didn't understand anything because he didn't even touch Eddie. It was his henchmen, Luther Reigns and Mark Jindrak. Although they yelled at each other pretty loudly that time, there were no punches thrown, but the following week things would heat up again, and they came to blows in a pretty violent way. Eddie Guerrero tried to take Kurt down directly, while Angle hit him in the face and tried to lock in a hold on his face so he couldn't breathe. It was Dick Show himself who had to step in to separate both wrestlers in the locker room. The great tension between them had been caused by the dispute over who would be the big face of SmackDown that year. Kurt got pretty upset with Big Show for separating them when he was getting the better part of the fight. But once the fight stopped, Kurt started to think it over and felt that what had happened wasn't right. That's how it went. He went over to where Eddie Guerrero was and apologized for what happened. However, Eddie didn't accept the apology and left. Angle grabbed him from behind, and before a new fight could break out, JBL stepped in to prevent another conflict. Big Show vs. Grand Khali is probably the scariest fight one could imagine. Even though they had their matches in the ring, everything is much different, especially when you imagine them actually fighting backstage. All of this would happen in the year 2009 during a live event in Puerto Rico. CM Punk, Big Show and Jericho teamed up to face the Great Khali, The Undertaker and Matt Hardy. While they were all incredible wrestlers, the crowd erupted when they saw the Giants face off. The big problem came when the Great Khali started stealing Big Show's moves during the match. Chris Jericho revealed that Big Show was very bothered by the Great Khali chopping his opponents, and before doing them, he would ask for silence so they could be heard. Something that is unique and characteristic of Big Show. When Big Show saw the Great Khali do this, in the same match they were sharing in Puerto Rico, the American Giant couldn't think of anything better than to confront him backstage, and Khali didn't care and refused to apologize. If that wasn't enough, after a barrage of horrible insults, Big Show threw the first punch at the Great Khali's jaw. And that's when they both started a real fight with brutal blows. Jericho says that there were almost 10 wrestlers trying to stop this fight. He also said that at one point during the fight, Big Show slipped and fell to the ground, and this gave Khali the upper hand in the confrontation. When they had finally managed to separate them, Vince McMahon arrived and made Elviso apologize to Khali for being the one who threw the first punch at the other wrestler. A strange incident occurred after the match between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar for the Universal title at WrestleMania 34, with the winner ending up being the former UFC fighter. Specialized media reports indicate Lesnar had a heated altercation with Vince McMahon. According to the website Pro Wrestling Sheet, the wrestler was furious when he arrived at the gorilla position after his match. Brock Lesnar was so angry that he even threw the championship at the production table where Vince McMahon was. Before the real video was released, several versions said that the title was thrown at a wall. But what everyone was wondering was, why would Lesnar get angry? A big part of Brock Lesnar's frustration was due to the poor reception from the audience for the match. It's worth mentioning that the match was poorly received by the fans as they booed throughout the entire fight. By the way, it's worth mentioning that before the match, it seemed like it would be one of the most predictable fights in terms of the outcome, but in the end, the result turned out to be surprising that night. So Lesnar wanted to get back at Vince, who was one of the writers of that match. In 2006, former world champions Batista and Booker T were added to appear in a commercial for the upcoming pay-per-view event called SummerSlam. At that time, Booker T and other superstars were having problems with Batista because of the romance he was having with Melina Perez, a diva who was with John Morrison at that time. On the other hand, other superstars believed that Batista was becoming quite arrogant, since he had become the official face of SmackDown after winning his first World Heavyweight Championship. It was believed that Batista acted as if he was better than everyone else. And for a man like Booker T, who had struggled from the very bottom of his life to get to where he was, and who had traveled far to establish himself in WWE. This situation with Batista and his arrogance was already bothering him. While they were filming the SummerSlam commercial, Batista jokingly asked the Raw wrestler, when would he come to work on SmackDown? Since he didn't have any rivals on that brand and had no one to wrestle with. Booker T didn't like this comment at all, as he was very close to the conversation and managed to hear everything. The following week, Booker T confronted Batista backstage and they went straight to blows. This situation was real. Kurt Angle was near them when they started fighting. And it was very recently. Kurt said on his podcast that after the match he saw Batista's face was pretty damaged and Booker T's eye looked a bit bruised. Kurt explained that he and other wrestlers had to separate them